What's up? Welcome in. Welcome back. Hoge Jahns are back with you after our
We're back, baby. Well, there's an
summer
echo. Whoa.
hiatus. Johns was really back there.
Just had my first sip of coffee today. I'm ready to
go. We're here. We are ready to go. We're catching up on news. There is some news to talk about. There's all types of things as we get back in the swing of things. And you know, I gotta say, Bears rookies report today. I mean, I think by now we're veterans, so I'm not really sure why we're reporting today.
I like
but
that.
You know, we're here for you because we know the training camp really gets going Friday. The first practice is Saturday. And you guys want to hear what we have to say about you know, what we want to see in camp, how exciting this camp could be. And of course, there's some contract stuff we got to get to as well off the top. So we're here. We missed you guys, and hopefully you didn't miss us too much because this is last month of nothing happening basically. So we're recharged. We charged our batteries up, and we'll see our families around Valentine's Day.
My first thought is, do you know how crazy Bourbonnais would be if this was the camp that Bourbonnais was getting?
Yeah.
Bourbonnais went crazy for Mark Trestman. Mark Trestman. This is Caleb Williams. This is Odunze. This is a team that has high expectations. Not just, I get there were some big name players in that team, but first overall pick quarterback. Could you imagine the energy in Bourbonnais for those practices? 10,000 fans. I'm not exaggerating the number. That many fans would be out there. Now you're talking about many close practices. The energy is going to be different. There are, 8 open practices, but the energy in Bourbonnais would be so much different than we're about to get in Lake Forest.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's just from what we've seen so far, it's just a totally different vibe in Lake Forest than Bourbonnais. It's just kind of like people are there, and then every 10 minutes or so, you might hear like somewhat of a cheer for some type of play that's made. Bourbonnais had a buzz, especially on the weekends. Depending on the year, of course, and the weather and all types of things. But I think that's an interesting point that I hadn't really thought of, just how just would feel a little bit different while you're there. I think the overall buzz, I think the overall excitement about this team and, you know, people wanting to listen to content like this. I mean, I still think that that's going to be through the roof, but in terms of actually physically being at the practices, it's not the same in Lake Forest. And yeah, I think we kind of say this every year. I think we missed the first week of Bourbonnais.
Yeah, I'm beginning not to like the energy levels at camp in Lake Forest. I don't know. It just seems like a very subdued suburban feel where the energy in Bourbonnais, just for like one-on-ones and everything, with the fans just 10, 12 yards away watching it all. Like, I kind of miss that. And I think this year, again, with Caleb Williams, Odunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, you could go on and on. Like, the energy would have been outstanding.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we're going to discuss a bunch of different things here, including, you know, regardless of what the energy is like, what we're looking forward to seeing at these practices, because at the end of the day, they still are football practices, just like they were in Bourbonnais. And the Bears have a lot of work to get done. In the meantime, make sure you're following us at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns, our show account at Hoge Jahns, as we get that sort of rebooted too at the same time. We'll have plenty of content out there as well throughout training camp. So make sure you check that out on Twitter, X, whatever you're calling it these days, at Hoge Jahns there. And then, of course, go to HogeJahns.com. You get all our merch, like that shirt Johnsy's wearing. We got golf polos up there. We got quarter zips. Before you know it, we're going to be back in quarter zip season in the fall. Hopefully not too soon. I'm holding on to summer as much as I can here. But that's all for you there at Hoge Jahns.
It's tornado season in Chicago.
Yeah, Jesus. Last night, everything okay by you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a couple that touched down. Not too far from here, but yeah, nothing outrageously damaged.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully everyone out there safe from the storms that came through last night. Because I don't know. I feel like people are curious what we do in our month away. What was the coolest thing that you did in the
The
last month,
coolest
Johnson?
thing,
Yeah.
my oldest son, we did a baseball trip to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, for one of the Calripian experiences.
Okay.
So that was a week long. We dealt with some injuries. The baseball was still pretty good, but it was just fun times with some great families. Um, yeah, I don't think I enjoyed myself for that long. What?
I just when I left you, it was just we got baseball every day. What's the coolest thing you did while you were gone? More baseball.
More baseball, but just in a
Yeah.
different state in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't hung out with like friends and enjoying beverages every night straight, like 7 weeks, 7 days straight in a long time. So needed to recover from that. But yeah, lots of fun with a lot of good, family friends, and the boys played good baseball.
Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah. For me, I don't know if this is a surprising answer or not, but James and I went to the NASCAR weekend here in Chicago, and it was super cool. It really was. Like, we're not like hardcore NASCAR fans or anything. I do watch some of the race. I usually watch Daytona every year and sort of follow along, but like never been to a NASCAR event, had no idea what to expect, especially, right down in the city streets I grew up driving on. But it was awesome, despite the fact that right when the rain started, or right when the Sunday race started, it just started dumping rain again like it did last year.
I was gonna
Um,
say that's 2 years in a row where the rain came in.
yeah, but it almost makes it cool. Like the strategy with the tires was way more interesting than I feel like NASCAR races normally are. And just in general, like the festival atmosphere, the music, it wasn't there were a lot of people there, but it didn't feel overly crowded. Like I'm always scared I haven't been to Lollapalooza since I was probably like a teenager or whatever. And like I'm like scared to go. It just sounds like overcrowded nonsense. So I was like a little nervous about that,
And you don't
especially
have
with,
basketball jerseys to wear anymore.
well, that too. But it wasn't like that. Like it just everything was very comfortable. And I have to say, NASCAR does a good job of like they have their drivers set up with like Q&As and autograph sessions all over like before the race. Like I don't know if that's normal for normal races or not, because like I said, I've never been to one, but um like they do a really good job of connecting with their fans that show up, if that makes sense. So I was really impressed. And it's just, I mean, it's pretty cool to see cars flying around that fast around, Columbus Avenue and Lakeshore Drive. Like I said, the same streets that we drive on all the time. So that was awesome.
I'm kind of disappointed in myself. I didn't even have that on my radar. I had it more on my radar last year.
Hmm.
Not the Bears. The city has it on contract for 1 year, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, so there's an option for either side to get out of it. I don't think they will, because it seems like it's been a pretty successful event the last 2 years despite the rain. So assuming they do come back next year, and I don't see why they wouldn't, I highly recommend going. I mean, and they even make it easy now. You can get like 1 day passes and kids passes and things like that, which they didn't have last year. So, if you're NASCAR curious, go check it out next year,
Yeah.
because it was cool.
NASCAR curious. I guess that is a term.
Yeah, that I just made up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. There are a couple players are out there. Jermaine Edmonds.
Yeah, Cole. Yeah, Cole
Komet.
Kmet was there too, I believe. Um, and Matt Forte was like the grand, what do they call him? The grand marshal, I
Dan
think.
Marshall.
He got to say, "Gentlemen, start your engines." They all fired up their engines and they immediately turned them off. I didn't. Apparently, they do that. I didn't, because they actually have to save their fuel.
Yeah.
So every time you see on TV, start your engines, they turn them on, and then like 10 seconds later, they just turn them back off to save fuel.
I was not aware.
Well,
So we spent our break in sports.
basically,
So we did.
that's actually not accurate at all. Although I did play golf all last weekend. I guess that's still sports. I spent a lot of time with my family though, just doing. We were in Lake Geneva for a while. It's good. It's good to recharge. Although this is the first year I've ever had my wife tell me. Yesterday she told me, "I'm ready for you to go back to work."
Yeah. I think we all reached that point.
Yeah. So
or
good,
just
because we're
running
here.
around the house, bumming around the house.
Yeah.
Up to no good.
All right. Speaking of work, should we talk about this contract stuff with the Bears' two highly touted first round picks here?
Yes. So Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze have not signed their contracts as of 9:52 a.m. this Tuesday, which is July 16th. That could change if you're listening to this in the afternoon. Level of concern, Adam Hoge. Let's go 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. How do you feel?
Like a 2. Because here's the thing, and I get why this becomes a big deal, and it is a big deal that you show up and you practice, especially for the quarterback and all that. If it came down to that, that actually being a scenario where Caleb is missing practices, which still surprised me at this point. They're going to be playing week 1. Like, we went through this with Roquan, and Roquan Smith, that was a highly...
That felt different, though, than this.
Well, right. Well, first of all, I don't think this becomes that. But my point is that got personal. There's a lot of drama involved. The reporting was kind of all in the middle of it, too. All this stuff. And guess what? Roquan Smith turned out to be a pretty damn good player pretty quickly by the time the game started. Like, they tried to, I feel like if I'm remembering right, he didn't start that first game in Green Bay. And then by the time that game was over, it was like he had 2 sacks and he should be on the field all the time.
He didn't report or he didn't practice until we were in Denver. Remember, for the joint practices?
Mm-hmm.
That's when it started. I think he ended up firing that agency later down the road as well. He got his contract extension eventually. Yeah, to me, the real deadline is Friday when the veterans report. So today's Tuesday, veterans report Friday. First practice is Saturday morning. That is the deadline to me. The weekend window. He's got to be out there Saturday. I get what you're saying, but every moment matters to this Caleb Williams development. And the Bears do have extra time with him, so they have some leeway. But I still think you want him out there, right, for that extra time. You don't want to be wasting a day with Tyson Bagent. That sounded mean. I get it, but you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
I know what you're saying, but it's a quarterback, so it feels a bit different. But I'm not going to freak out until Friday or Saturday when they have the first practice Saturday morning at 9:35 a.m.
I think if you've been paying attention to every, step in this process, going back to even before the Bears drafted Caleb, I mean, everything has been very meticulous and purposeful. And
you almost felt like this was coming.
Well, I mean, yeah, the situation of Caleb not really having an agent and this team behind him and all this stuff that, we knew last fall and all these rumors. But that's another good point to bring up. All these rumors that this is going to be a problem and his dad's going to be a problem. And this is none of it came true. So this just seems like the next little thing that needs to be figured out. And based on the playbook of what we've seen from both sides of this so far, it feels like it's going to be figured out. Caleb had a big foundation event over the weekend. And guess who was there? Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles.
He's in town.
He's here. That there seems to be absolutely no ill will at all at any point in any of this. In fact, it's been the exact opposite. So with all that in mind, whatever they're haggling over for the number 1 overall pick, when everything's relatively set in stone and they're just talking about, the fine language, sometimes things do get a little lost in translation when you're not dealing with NFL PA certified agents, because those are the agents that are used to going through this all the time. And now you have a team of whatever you're going to call them, lawyers, I'm not, accountants, who knows, that are trying to figure this out, that probably don't normally do this, or maybe they do because it's all sort of a mystery. And maybe that's just the hold up here at the finish line. But wouldn't you be surprised if Caleb Williams actually misses practice time?
I'd be stunned.
Yeah.
I'd be stunned. In terms of your point about ill will, there's almost immediately ill will with the Roquan Smith contract negotiations. Like, I don't get any sense of that right now. Not with Caleb Williams. Not with him in town, like you said, already opening up his charity, his foundation. Like, how about that for embracing the community almost immediately? So, yes, to answer your question, I'd be surprised, shocked if he wasn't there Saturday with the starters.
Yeah. And I mean, now Rome's a different thing, but I don't, they're probably not connected at all. Other than, I mean, sometimes it's just a trickle down, uh, and wanting to set different or not wanting to, sometimes not wanting to set different precedents with your contracts and what you're bending on. So maybe the Caleb one needs to get done first, just because he's the first of the two top 10 picks, and then they get roamed on. I don't know. I'm not that worried about it though. I'm also not that surprised that we're still talking about this, because it kind of had, I don't, like you said a few minutes ago, kind of this hunch that it was going to be this way.
When I say that, like, just long and drawn out a little bit.
Yeah. But I agree with you. To me, Saturday is the real deadline. Although I don't think it looks good if Friday on a report day and you're addressing your team for the first time and all that, if your starting quarterback's not in the room. I don't think that's good for either side. I don't think it's good optics for the Bears. I don't think it's good optics for Caleb either.
I don't think Caleb Williams would want that.
Not based on what we've seen from him.
And heard.
Yeah, and because everything I said earlier about purposeful from the Bears end, I feel the same way about Caleb's end. I mean, he seems to be all about ball, and it just, even today with rookies reporting, I'm sort of surprised we're sitting here at almost 10 o'clock now, unsure of whether Caleb's in the building.
With Rome Odunze, you're almost wondering if he's waiting to see if there's certain language in Caleb Williams' contract that he can get, because sometimes that's what it is. It's a matter of semantics, have you?
Right.
In a way. Rome Odunze's agents they were Mitch Trubisky's agents. So, like, they've been through this many times before with a lot of top players, top 10 picks. Kind of interested to see how. I'm just wondering if the two situations are linked in some capacity.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see Rome's agents just being like, well, let's see what Caleb, if they're going to make some exceptions here with Caleb. What you know, our guys,
can we have changed with him?
Because remember, if the Bears didn't have the Caleb pick, like most teams only have one first round pick, right? So let's say in many of the cases of these clients, these agents are representing, like, this is our first round pick for this team that we're negotiating. In this rare situation, you have one ahead of you, even though you were also drafted in the top 10. So it's a little bit different just for these guys negotiating Rome's situation compared to maybe some other clients they might have who also went in the first round. Again, it's probably almost too much time spent on that, but obviously we'll continue to monitor. And if we're doing a show early next week and these guys haven't practiced, well, okay, now it's a
storyline,
major big story. Yeah, and I don't think it's a story that either side of this, based on what we've seen, want to be dealing with at all. Let's talk about the things that we're excited about, though. Once we do see practices, I'll address this too, because I've gotten some questions and DMs about this. When the first padded practice might be. Now, the short answer to that is I don't know for sure, but based on what they did last year, because I went back and looked at it, they pretty much went a full week without pads before they put them on. And then so they report Friday, but the first open practice to fans isn't until the following Friday. And based on the math I did off of how they did this last year, that could be their first padded practice. If they go off of the schedule from last year, that would be their first padded practice.
It's always the date you circle. To me, like the date I'm circling this year, if we're talking about like the training camp routine, the schedule, it's the game in Buffalo. I think that's you're not going to see Caleb Williams and a bunch of the starters playing Ken. It's just too soon, way too soon. That game in Buffalo, in terms of his first snaps, first time in a full Bears uniform, first time for Odunze out there, first time for first snaps for a lot of players this year, first live action. Like that's what I'm looking forward to is the Buffalo game.
Yeah. You don't think that they'll just like even have him go out and command the huddle for a few plays and hand the ball off in Canton?
No. Maybe, you know what? Sure, things could change. Maybe the NFL will be like, come on, help us out a little bit here. But no. I think it's just too soon for any risks to be taken.
It is.
It's 12 days after like their first practice.
Yeah, and if they're not putting the pads on until the 26th, which again, don't quote me on that. I'm just going off of last year's schedule. But yeah, that's a less. The first game is August 1st. 3, 4, 5. That would only be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 practices before the first game. And they probably won't even have pads on for all those 5 practices too. So to your point, honestly, to whoever's playing in that game, and bodies do have to go play for somebody's got to go out there and actually play in that game. That is not a whole lot of practice time, or even conditioning.
No,
like from a full padded practice standpoint, it's an interesting.
It's important to practice quite often in your pads to prepare for those games, and those practices, just in terms of sheer number, aren't there.
Yeah, and then they basically have 10 days until the game against the Bills, so there's a little bit more time. So I'm with you on all that. I think that makes sense. It's always fun turning on that Hall of Fame game.
Yeah. So I had my 10. Well, it's the start of the season. My 10 burning questions. I had that column come out today. My first one is like, when will we see Caleb Williams challenge the defense? I thought at too many times, especially when the defense was at its full strength, like when Montez was out there for a snap or two, you could clearly see the defense had the advantage. I think just in terms of progress, development, you need to see Caleb Williams have some consistent success. Like just one practice for me where throughout it he is consistent and he is challenging that first string defense all over the field, first team defense all over the field. Like that's what I want to see at some point in camp.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm going to repeat what I've been saying almost every year with these young quarterbacks the Bears have, but like I don't think it's too much to ask to have the quarterback look good
in a situation that favors them.
Like I know it sounds so simple, but like we want to always baby these rookies so much, and it's like, well, wait a minute. I mean, this kid's been the anointed one since he's been 11 years old. Now, I'm not saying he needs to go out and dominate every practice. Don't get me wrong. I'm just, to your point, like, doesn't have to be the first day, maybe not even the first week, but we shouldn't be 2 weeks into camp again being like, well, when's the offense going to turn it on? The defense is such an advantage. Like, no, there should be times, to your point, especially situationally, when they're 11 on 11, pads are on, it's still not completely real football, but go out there and show that you're the dude.
I'm kind of sick and tired of the storyline that the defense is ahead of the offense.
Yeah.
For once, I want the storyline to be like the offense is taking it to the defense.
Yeah. Which, by the way, speaking of Bourbonnais off the top, if you go back to those 2013 and even 2014, as much as that season spiraled, away from them. In camp, they had a decent offense. They had playmakers on offense. And those are probably some of the most.
Oh, Charles Tillman versus Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall.
Yeah.
Again, the energy in Bourbonnais when that matchup lined up, just if it was one-on-ones.
And Martellus Bennett slamming Kyle Fuller to the ground.
An electric moment. But seriously.
I mean, you don't want to come to that, but that speaks to the level of competitiveness that was going on there. And I think with what you've seen the Bears add on offense, that's not asking too much.
I like to see them get to that point. At the same time, like how consistent can the Bears defense be? Because they know they're good. The secondary knows it's good. Can they be dominant as much as possible against Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore? We're always talking about how the defense is going to make the offense better, how Caleb Williams will progress faster because of what the defense can do against them. But I think the opposite can happen as well, where practicing against DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet can help this secondary, this just relatively still young secondary, take the next step it has to in their careers.
So, which player besides Caleb Williams are you most excited to see in camp?
I'll go like by position, at least for some of these positions. I want to see Rome Odunze. I want to see Montez Sweat. Let's not forget that he wasn't part of training camp last year. See what type of impact that he has. Remember, like the Khalil Mack effect, how that dude was sprinting from every single drill and like everybody loved it. The team was raving about it. That was his second training camp.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how Montez Sweat practices. Offensive line. I don't think there is one.
Well, I'd say Darnell Wright.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I'm mistaken. Yes, Darnell Wright for sure.
And Tevin, when he's on the field, is always fun to watch.
Yeah,
even
he's
if
a
it's
mauler.
practice. I mean, we got to wait till those pads go on for the offensive and defensive.
Well, the
line.
most realistic game-like drills are like the pass rush drills between the offensive and defensive lines. Darnell Wright versus Montez Sweat is must watch.
Yeah,
is must watch. Like, that's when we move our reporting locations to go watch that a bit more closely, because that is another instance where you have that in training camp and it's an electric drill because the fans are right there.
I gotta say though, it's gonna be tough this year when you also have these wide receivers going up against the secondary.
Yeah,
in one-on-ones, and even last year at times it was. I mean, it got heated. You had the Chase Claypool nonsense yelling at Tyreek Stevenson, and Stevenson handled that very, very well. I hope it does. I don't think it'll get toxic like that, because Claypool was pretty much the only one making that toxic last year. I think it'll be very healthy, but very competitive. And I'll give you a guy, this one might seem too obvious, but based on what I saw, even in OTAs, his level of competitiveness and drive, despite just getting a giant contract, Jalen Johnson, I think, is going to be fun to watch in camp. He just, like, he showed up to OT when he was there at OTAs. Like, it was week one of the season with what he was bringing to the field. And I just feel like that whole secondary is going to be sort of be feeling that way based on what we saw in the spring. So I think, and if you're coming out to practice in Lake Forest at any point, those wide receiver one-on-ones against the secondary are going to be, those sessions are going to be very fun to watch.
Must watch. I thought we got a couple good one-on-one matchups a couple years ago. Remember when the tight ends kind of took it to the secondary a bit? Now, if anything, I think it showed that the secondary wasn't up for any challenge come the regular season. Jimmy Graham just spiking the football left and right. Cole Kmet was on the team, had a good training camp that year. See any other players like Tyreek Stevenson, if you want to include him in that secondary, just in terms of him taking that next step opposite Jalen Johnson. Torrey Taylor, I'm surprised you haven't mentioned him yet.
Well, we have a whole segment devote. No, just kidding.
You can do that
Uh,
yourself.
well, on that subject though, it, for things that will be entertaining in Canton at the Hall of Fame game, that will be the first time we see this new NFL kickoff rule executed in the NFL at any point. And based on conversations I've had, that I mean, there's a level of unknown even among head coaches and special teams coordinators on how this is all going to play. I mean, they know the rules, but they don't know, the strategy that's going to come out and how much there's going to be a little bit of a tug on that, like even in the preseason, because you never want to show too much. But in this situation, because you've never really done it, you're
You have
going to
to
have to
show
try
something.
some
Yeah.
things. You're going to have to try some things.
The sense I get is that like tight ends and maybe your smaller, more mobile offensive linemen might have new roster spots available to them because of that.
A
Because
couple,
it's
probably.
because it's a different. You got it's condensed, but there's space, so you got to move a little bit. And if you're like an outside linebacker, even an inside linebacker with some pass rush moves, I mean, you're looking at a different roster spot too because you're going to need to make moves on a guy within 5 yards. It's a pass
Yeah.
rush. So I'm intrigued always by like the final roster battles, and I think that kickoff rule is going to play a huge role for some guys' futures.
Well, and that's another reason why you got to try some things, because you got to actually test out, those battles of what you're talking about. I mean, are we going to have a corner, your sixth cornerback on the team who's usually might have a spot on kickoff cover, but all of a sudden, if you got teams now throwing out their bigger linemen that are trying to block them, well, that's a lot easier when you got a head of steam coming down the whole field. The corner can blow right by them. But when you're within 5 yards, think about sometimes when you see a corner blitz, like a nickel blitz, and the left tackle just kind of like shoves them away right to the ground. Like that's more of the condensed space that we're talking
Yeah.
about here compared to running all the way downfield and be able to blow by a bigger guy, which is why you wouldn't have a bigger guy usually, on kickoff return. So it's that part of it to me is going to be really interesting to watch.
And you got to have some level. We're going to get like scouty, football nerdy here for a second. You got to have like some level of like short area quickness, that quick burst that scouts look for because you can't move until the guy catches the ball.
Right. Nobody can move.
It's not like you're the fast guy, the traditional gunner who's just going to beat everybody with his speed. No, you got to like have some immediate start and stop time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll continue to talk about that. I mean, and obviously they'll be testing all this stuff out in practices too, but it's really not until you have an opponent, you don't really know what your opponent's going to do, that this thing is. And do the Bears really need to have an extra preseason game? No, but in this situation, not the worst thing to have. Whatever those extra reps end up being, 6, 7, 8 reps, whatever they end up being in the game, to be able to test this kickoff stuff out. Small advantage there. Small advantage, I'd say.
Yeah.
And I'll be interested to see if they use Tory Taylor. Because the
Over
placement
Cairo
of the
Santos.
football on these kicks is going to be huge. It's not
Yeah.
that Cairo can't do that, but if you have this guy that you drafted in Tory Taylor, who admittedly doesn't have much kickoff experience, but if he's been working on it and he can put some of the same English on the football that he can with the punts, it'll be interesting. That's just something to kind of keep in your back pocket.
It's the precision of it too, landing it within around the 3 or 2 yard line, so it can be fielded. It's fascinating. I know you being the special teams coordinator that you are is definitely intrigued. Let me. I have a question for you. How many unique different storylines do you think we're going to get out of Hard Knocks that we will have to follow up on and cover post show?
Well, first of all, there's going to be plenty from every episode probably to talk about. I think you're probably referring to more to like things that might actually become like a news story.
Yeah.
controversy. I mean,
Like, look at the
look,
Giants episodes where,
that's what I'm saying. There's Bears stuff coming out of these Giants episodes that have been out so far.
yes, absolute tease just in terms of the pre-draft meetings that were aired. That's Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze. Their pre-draft meetings with the Giants were already aired in Hard Knocks. But like the intrigue that Hard Knocks presented in terms of like the Saquon Barkley negotiations, where they actually showed the conversation. What's his name? Joe Shane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having that conversation with Saquon Barkley over the phone. And I think there was some, like, I may be wrong on this, but didn't Saquon Barkley say one thing? The Giants said another, and there's actual video proof of like backing the Giants. Like, that's news, especially in New York City
Right.
and Philadelphia.
And in that case, remember, teams do have control over what goes out. You know, they have final say on these episodes. And in that case,
Yes.
hey, yeah, that's something you can leave in there because that helps us, you know, from a PR standpoint. It'll be very, I mean, I'm excited about it just to consume it. I think it's going to be really interesting. Another reason why you want to get these rookie contracts done before that all. I mean, that actually could all still be in the producers have already been there. The cameras are already rolling. I mean, like there's some of this stuff could end up being in the first episode of Hard Knocks.
How hard are you going to try to get in Hard Knocks?
Not hard. I'm not gonna worry about it.
Knock it off.
Now, Mark Carmen, that's a different story.
Well, he's already got like his floose look going.
Yeah,
Purposefully, correct? Like he's going for it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna worry about it too much. I'm curious how obvious it actually is. You know what I mean?
The
Like
Mark Carmen look or
the cameras, the I don't know what to expect.
I think we'll notice more of them at practice because they'll be out there shooting parts of the practice that traditionally we know how practices work. The camera stations come out there for the first 10 minutes and then they leave.
Right. Those ones won't be.
No, they'll be
out. But the Bears already have that. You know, like the Bears already have a ton of people out there filming everything. So, well, you just got me excited about Hard Knocks again.
Mm-hmm.
The third Giants episode is coming out tonight. That's been good. It's been good. It's been way more. It's been much better than I thought for off season. It's just because we don't really get the.
You don't get I think the off season might be more intriguing because you have pre-draft stuff. Everybody loves the draft. Everybody loves the decision making for the draft. Then you have free agency, how the money's spent, especially when you're talking about a beloved running back like Saquon Barkley and how negotiations soured. That in itself is more than intriguing.
Well, and I will give HBO and the NFL credit. Hard Knocks was getting stale because it was like they've been doing these training camp shows for like 2 decades. Maybe it doesn't go back that far, but I feel like I watched like the Cowboys episodes like 20 years ago, whatever it was. Like it was almost like plug and play, the same storylines every year. Oh, here's the guy who's probably not going to make the team, but he's got an interesting story. And then they caught him in the 5th episode. You know, it was like every year, it was like each storyline, it was just change the faces, but the stories were relatively the same. I think they've done a better job even in the last few years, probably starting with the Lions episode or 2 years ago, of just at least trying to change that up a little bit. But by adding the in-season version and now this off-season version, which is great. And remember, this year's in-season version is going to be a whole division. It's not just one team. So that'll give us some more insight too. Meanwhile, and our producer Kent saying 2002 was the first one. That was a pretty good guess by me then. So 22 years ago. So it's just I don't know. I'm excited, but I think all teams in general, though, if you look at the amount of teams now involved just this season, when you talk about Giants, Bears, the whole NFC South, right, is the in-season version. So that's 6 of your teams in 1 year. So if you're a team like the Bears that have been holding out on this forever, you just got to get used to it, man. This is This is the new league.
The in-season version will be unique because everything's happy for the most part during training camp.
Mm-hmm.
To your point about it becoming a bit stale because just the vibe is a bit different, but the regular season where you could have a bit of turmoil, some hard personnel decisions, some injuries, some conflict amongst players and coaches, should be good.
Well, that's why the Dolphins won last year was pretty good. I mean, other than, the head coach is just extremely entertaining. But yeah, they went through some struggles there. They got their ass kicked a couple times, and you had to see, how they handled that on Monday as a team. You can actually go back and watch those episodes. It's very interesting. All right. Anything else?
Should be in Bourbonnais.
Oh,
I think it's affecting my coverage.
what do you think JD would be saying about you saying that, though?
Well, I think we all got sick of going down the Bourbonnais at certain points. Maybe I just want a bit more juice at my practices. You always talk about like all these coaches want more energy. The music is blasting. Like sometimes having the fans there on top of you brings out a different practice, which I think personally brings out a different evaluation.
I would agree with that. I think even the players would agree with you on that.
I'm not saying go down there for 5 weeks, maybe 2 weeks. For a training camp like this, I'm just trying to. I think you asked me like just my excitement level, like the expectation level for this training camp. When I saw that last night when he texted it over, I thought about the energy that Bourbonnais had for Jay Cutler, for Brandon Marshall, for Alshon Jeffrey when they were all down there, for even when Mitch Trubisky was there for that year, that second year. The energy was outstanding. I think this one would have blown all of those camps out just in terms of energy, the music, the fan, like the capacity. It could have been amazing.
I wonder if eventually we see the Bears go back on the road. And that's not based on anything I've heard, although I have heard it's quite a headache to do what they have to do at a house hall. They don't really have the parking. It's.
And if you my most honest answer, it's kind of subdued and suburban.
Yeah. But what look, the NFL sent out an email the other day about just sort of announcing training camps. There's all this interesting tidbits in there, and one of them was just like if you go back to like 2001, the amount of teams that went away for camp, it was like all but 5. And I'm like sort of estimating that because I don't have it right in front of me, but it was like almost all the teams were gone for camp, and now almost all the teams are in their own facilities. And part of that, I think, is because like the Bears are a perfect example. You invest so much money into improving your facilities, it almost feels like an obligation. Oh, shit, we just doubled the size of our building. We have this amazing weight room. All this stuff's better than what we would have for a couple of weeks down in Bourbonnais. So we got to use that stuff to our advantage. And I get that part of it. But I think what you're talking about, Johns, is something that I wonder if, because things tend to be cyclical and change. I wonder if, and I'm not saying anytime soon, but 10 years from now, do we start to see more teams get away? The Dallas Cowboys still do it. Now, part of that's weather, but like they still go to California. They don't go down the road to Bourbonnais. They go to California, and they have been forever. So, and it used to be, fans forget this, used to have a ton of teams. You know how in baseball, everybody goes to Arizona and Florida? You used to have the Saints come north. The Chiefs, I believe, were in Minnesota. Like you had, it was like 5 different teams between Wisconsin and Minnesota in different communities. The Bears were one of them in Platteville at that time. You had these teams that from the South that would come north where it wasn't as hot. It still can be pretty damn hot at these practices, but you're not in the South at least. And I still wonder if that becomes a thing again. Just eventually, because some team's going to think about it and start doing it, and then they're going to win a Super Bowl, and then another team's going to be like, ooh, that's interesting. We need to try that. And then it's just going to happen again.
I think there's just value in some of, call it, I don't know, old school approach. Just, bringing your team on the road for bonding. But beyond that, I think there's just a level of grit and toughness that comes with it, that it could maybe enhance your evaluations, maybe challenge the players a bit differently. But they don't have the cafeteria that could make you anything you want, like inside. Like, I don't know. There could be something to it. And you always hear coaches talk about how they want like more practice time or different types of practice atmospheres. It's been a few years at House Hall since the Bears have made that change, and I just find the atmosphere a bit stale, to be honest with you. It doesn't have the vibe that, what I grew up with in my career, and I think a lot of coaches came up with in their own careers. It's not the same.
I'll give you this. This is this email I was talking about. So in 2000, actually, let's go to 2001 because that was the peak of it. 2001, NFL teams with home training camps, so teams that stayed home, 9 of 31. So 29%, only 29% stayed at home. Now, 2024, you have 24 of 32. 75%. It's completely flipped on that. And I wonder, I get why. I totally understand it. I just wonder if it'll change. I was trying to look too at the.
So like when we went to the Colts practice facility last year, like that is a park that is separate from their usual practice facility, correct?
Yes.
Like that seems like a good blend. Not too far, but different. I think different could be good just in terms of like the Bears will be practicing in Lake Forest from like now until January. Different can be good.
Here we go. The eight clubs will be spending the entirety of camp away from their facilities. Buffalo is one of them.
Playoff team.
They go to St. John Fisher University in Rochester, New York. Dallas, I mentioned them, the Cowboys. They always go to Oxnard, California.
Playoff team.
Indy is one of those teams, even though it's relatively close. They're just going to a different suburb. But they have that amazing facility in Carmel, Indiana. I think it's technically Westfield, Indiana, but the Colts are one of them. Kansas City Chiefs, have you heard of them? They go to Missouri Western State University.
Playoff team.
Las Vegas, the Raiders go to Costa Mesa, California. I think part of that is going back closer to their fans in California before they moved. The Rams go to Loyola Marymount University. And New Orleans, they go to Irvine, California too. So they do go to better weather than down there in the South. And then the Steelers, another traditionally pretty damn good franchise, go to St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
If you think Mike Tomlin and Andy Reid are good coaches, I don't know. Maybe you're onto something. We'd like to thank everybody for watching. This episode has been sponsored by Olivet Nazarene University.
Yeah, I was going to say, who are you campaigning for here, man?
Doesn't even have to be there. I'm just giving you out my honest take on it.
You just want to go play bags at Donlands. That's what you want to do.
Maybe I do. But that's part of like the training camp experience that needs to happen. But that, like the Bears offensive line can't even sneak out and grab a beer anymore. Like that was part of camp. That happened. I remember seeing Kyle Long and all those guys walk in there and have a beer together. The offensive linemen all did it. And I'm like, there is some, I honestly believe there's something to it. In terms of like the atmosphere, coaches want some type of energetic atmosphere. It can be as boring as can be in Lake Forest for training camp.
Well, we'll see if it's a little bit better this year. Hopefully.
Hope so.
Yeah. Hopefully. All right. Well, this has been a fun episode. It's good to be back. And we're going to have it all covered for you. Unless some big news breaks, we won't be circling back until after the weekend. It's a little awkward with the Bears reporting on Friday, not practicing until Saturday. So we'll have another episode for you early next week to kind of recap everything that happens over the weekend. But we will be back to 2 episodes a week starting next week. So kind of get back in the flow of things. And then, of course, when regular season games begin, if not sooner, we are back with 3 episodes a week as we normally do in season. So anybody worried about the podcast, where it's been, we are back to normal, pretty much the schedule we've always followed. And of course, you can also follow along on CHGO pretty much every day as well with breakdowns. So that's always an option for you too. Hit us up, Twitter, social media, at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. Find us and if you haven't already, please go follow our show account at Hoge Jahns. We'll continue to throw content up there as well too. And we're back in the swing of things. Here we go. All the merch is up, hogeandjahns.com. Talk to you next time.
See ya.